Hello to everybody. I really would like to be there with you in Sámi Council meeting in Tromsø, but unfortunately, even hard I tried it, I couldn't make it because of the other engagements here in the European Parliament, now on the high season of finalizing the reports and last dossiers. But I hope I have the chance to do it at some point later on. What I would like to address you with is that I hope you can count on me and count me as a partner here in the European Union on progressing the human rights, the rights of the Sámi people, and the concrete issues in legislation, how to make the representation in EU possible, and how to take the Arctic environment impact assessment on place. And first let me start with the report what I was making here in the European Parliament about the future of the Arctic. And there are of course many security issues and others, but there were two essential points that I would like to raise with you. The first is the Arctic environment impact assessment. And as you know, all the consequences of forestry, new railroads, mining, big-scale industries, you name it, are totally different than in other places of the world because the nature recuperates itself much slower. The consequences are synergistic in many places. If you lose the forests, then you lose the reindeer herding, then you lose part of the vegetation, you lose part of the animals, you lose this and that. Plus then there's always the threshold not getting anything quite right back again. So you need special Arctic precautionary principle and Arctic environmental impact assessment when you plan economic activities in that region. And that was the strong suggestion from the Parliament. And as a part of this impact assessment, you should have the hearing process of Sámi people. It is the part of internationally recognized and respected principles for indigenous peoples, whose lives, livelihoods and culture is found on certain region and area and traditions. You just can't go there and break it with some other activities without asking, without consent, without consultations. And this, as we know, is happening all of the time. We have corrected in Finland and in other countries the cultural rights, the language rights, and partly the independence and self-governing regulation. But the right for the land, the right for the own culture that exists on the land, that is not acknowledged and that is not secured. And certainly this is an issue I hope that the Nordic countries could take a proper action and correct the failures in the history at latest now. But then again there's another aspect, and this is the human rights, principal rights aspect. Sámi people are the only indigenous people in the Europe. And while we as the EU are preaching, quite rightly, to other cultures and parts of the world of the rights of the indigenous people and the need for asking forgiveness on the past mistakes and ensuring the rights and representation, we are not very good on doing that on the Europe. You can't change issues that quickly, but you can take small and partial steps. And one step like that would be establishing a representation of the Sámi people here in Brussels. To grant it that kind of an official status, that what the member states do have will require very long time to happen. And the reason for this opposition is, as you know, this independence fight that is going on in various member states, Basque region and some others, not to mention all in detail. And member states are fearing that if you make that kind of a concession to one, you recognize their right for the land, right for self-determination and right for representation. There's an array of areas in Europe that would follow. I don't think that this Catalan case would be the problem. But let it be so. We have to live in the political reality. But what I think we could have is to have this kind of a consent of all the Nordic countries, that is Norway, Finland, Sweden and Denmark, that there would be this kind of a circulation of Sami representation on their embassies and representations. And it wouldn't cost that much to have one corner of the room or one room, and then paid one person here in Brussels who could follow the EU legislations and hearings, be it Commission, Council or Member States, who could prepare the information for Sami Council and for the Sami community, who could collect the opinions and who then could write the positions and statements by the Sami representation to the Parliament and to Council and Member States, and why not to the Committee of Region and the Economic and Social Committee. This makes it visible and this makes it heard, and this is only right to do so, because Sami people have been in EU level silenced way too long. And to follow the rights of the indigenous peoples, I think that we should put the effort as Nordics and to put it here, and then gradually start building this kind of a status of the indigenous people of the Europe, Sami people, to be heard, to be represented, and to be somehow part of the decision-making procedure. Some things you can learn from the Roma community, that is of course very different kind of an issue. But you have a Roma program, you have a Roma platform, and you have lots of different kind of resolutions and statements by the Parliament in Roma issue. That is another matter how well that question is dealt from the member states, especially taking up the eastern member states like Hungary at the moment. But anyway, we could establish indigenous people's policy, not outside the EU only, but inside the EU. And we could establish that kind of a platform to hear, consult and plan what kind of activities for Sami people are needed. And we could have a special program what kind of support is needed for the indigenous people's cultures, environmental impact assessment, education, and other fields, democratic representation. Hopefully this will happen, and hopefully the next Commission will take a lead on that subject. And hopefully our Finnish presidency can be supportive to this idea on the latter part of this year. And hopefully our prime ministers will commit and support the idea. But anyway, I'm going to continue to work for better Arctic, a proper Arctic environment impact assessment with the consent of the Sami people, with Sami people's full rights and the representation here in the EU. So I would be very happy to continue the discussions with you over these topics via email, via your comments, and with your meeting at some point. But for the moment, I just wish you all the best success in the future, and thank you that you exist.